Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's session. My name is Felicia Escover, and I'm with the City of Dublin's Economic Development team. Our webinar today is Before and After Enhancing Design for Clear Communication. Our objectives today are to understand the concept of enhancing design for clear communication, to learn techniques for improving clarity, logical formatting, readability, and overall simplicity in design. And finally, to gain practical knowledge and insights from real-world examples of design refinements to optimize existing designs and create impactful visual communication, all to really help you in promoting your business and the messages you're trying to get across. So to help us accomplish this, we have our facilitator, Kenneth Bess. Kenneth is a seasoned designer with over 30 years of experience. He began his career in graphic design at Skidmore, Owings, and Mural, where he led numerous signage projects, including the United States Assembly in Moscow. He later held key positions at Siegel and Gale and Glenzer in New York. Mr. Bess co-founded Design Directions Inc. in Puerto Rico before returning to the Bay Area to found Best Design. Known for his bold, simple, and disciplined approach, he has worked on diverse projects, including boutique hotels, supermarkets, public libraries, always aiming to create unique and welcoming spaces. Kenneth is also one of the consultants in the City of Dublin Small Business Navigator program and is available to help small businesses with their graphic needs. While Kenneth is presenting, feel free to send over any questions and we'll do our best to address them as we go through the slides or to take care of those questions at the end. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to our facilitator today, Mr. Kenneth Bess.
Hello. I guess, here we go. What you're going to be seeing this afternoon is a series of 16 slides. On the left side of each one will be the image of the before, whatever that might be. In this case, it's a typical catalog page by a company that makes technical equipment, and they wanted to create a better layout that was clearer and less cluttered. And so what you see on the right is the format that I developed, getting rid of extraneous items like the little globe with the type running through it and the little medallion, and adding that information elsewhere on the page so that there's a clear structure and you can see each of the items and read about them and see the pricing more comprehensively. I think we can go on. This is an example of typography. The one on the left is a page from the U.S. Postal Service's International Mail Manual. The firm that I was with some years ago was tasked with redesigning this manual in a way that would make it clearer and easier to access. And the page on the right is, well, it's not the exact same page as the other one. It is from the same publication, and it shows that by changing the typography, creating bolder headlines and lighter body copy, and giving it a little clearer, simpler structure, that it appears to be more accessible when you're searching for information. Next. On the left is a map of the bicycle routes that were being planned by the city of Palo Alto. What they wanted to do was break it down into a series of maps, beginning with 2016 and going on to 2017 and 18, and then a fourth one, which was future, so that all of the information that was contained on the one map was broken down into more readable and accessible forms on the four other maps. And the background was made simpler and clearer, so that the road structure and the railroad and the things that are given remain the same on each map and are much clearer. And the information that changes, which are the bike routes in the red and the orange, it was designed so that the city could then update it as progress is being made. Next. I was approached by the Globe Public Library to design a logo for their friends, and I was given the little sketch on the left, as well as the existing logo, which is above that, which basically is just a collection of typography and a book or image that looks more like a magazine. But I understood what they wanted, and I kind of took that image and made it more impactful and more bookish, and added the typography that you see there. And they were very happy with it, and I haven't seen how they've used it yet, but it's only just been done recently. Next. Again, I was given the logo on the left, which is the company is called Pay It Forward, and the SA stands for San Antonio. It's an organization that finds housing for homeless people, as well as other services that they may need. And the basic problem with the one that they had is that there were too many things going on. There were two typefaces that were split apart, that didn't allow you to understand that that was the name of the organization. So they wanted to keep the blue, and so I just took the heart out of the typography and combined it with the house shape in the way you see there, and put the name in one line below that, and it makes a much clearer, a bolder statement. We can go now. Okay. Turning the Page is an organization that does what it says, engages families for student success by promoting reading and the use of libraries and that sort of thing. They actually wanted something that would acknowledge that they've been around for 25 years. And in taking on that challenge, it meant that I wanted to look at simplifying the logo and making it something that would accept the additional information, like the 25. What you see on the right is the new logo, and then below that is the way it is used to indicate their 25th anniversary, which they use on promotional materials and other items this year. This Food for Less is a franchise supermarket chain that's owned by Kroger, and a local franchisee in Stockton owned several stores in the Central Valley and the Bay Area, and they wanted to update the logo as well as store graphics. So we took this dated logo, and we haven't completed the project yet, but we presented 4 or 5, or actually more than that, but these were the kind of the finalists on the right that give the logo a little more cohesion and a little more modern look. And we're waiting to see where we go from here. Next. Another thing that is often a problem with organizations is that they have too many divisions or activities or organizations combined into one thing. What you see on the left is a breakdown of the various components of an activist and community organization in Los Angeles called Strategy and Soul Movement. So what we did was give each of their main divisions a logo using the letter forms that were designed for that purpose, and then organizing them into a chart that's much more easy to access and understand than the one that you see on the right. And now each of these units can be used individually for different purposes, like the Frontline Press publishes books, and the Bus Riders Union is an entity that deals with the transit issues in the LA area. So it was very satisfying to see how the almost unintelligible hierarchy on the right was organized. Next. This is Freezies is a candy company in Utah that does freeze-dried candy, and they started out as a home business, and they had these homemade labels, and they were also part of something they called Gentle Giant Farms, which they have since split off because it was confusing. And so we decided that they needed a logo that was candy-ish and fun and friendly, and the information that is on the label is more geared to the product, the colorful quality of the product. The labels you see on the left are prototypes. They haven't gone into production yet because everything's kind of going at a rapid pace. The company's expanding, and they haven't followed through on the labels yet. I'm working with them this week to do that. But you can see that the professionalism that the new labels show will certainly be something that is that the consumers will relate to better than the kind of homemade look that doesn't necessarily indicate quality. Next. Oop, go back. There we go. Something that is very common in small businesses and not so small businesses is clutter, visual clutter. The right is a door in a complex of medical offices, and it's one of the worst ones, but it's certainly not untypical of a lot of them, where too much is on the door in a fashion that's difficult to read and is too many things going on visually. So we were asked by the owner of the complex to come up with cleaner door graphics, along with a whole other signage program that hasn't been implemented yet. But as you see on the left, we got rid of things that weren't necessary. Each tenant can have certain things. He has his name and office hours and phone number and different things. They can have more or less information, but it all follows the layout format generally that's shown on the right. And it's I think you can see how much of an improvement it is, how much more professional the tenant looks than he would with the door on the left. Next. That same complex was also plagued by a lot of mismatched graphics, including the directory that you see on the right, on the left, and another map, which is kind of incomprehensible, and another sign just for the elevator. So we were asked to design a directory that could be more easily updated and would contain all the information in one place, so that the map was was made more realistic and given the suite numbers that are actually in those buildings. And then the elevator sign was moved over to the bottom because the elevator is just around to the right from where that directory is located. And you can see on the directory on the left that it's all stripes and lines, and it's very difficult to see exactly what you're looking for. And people that go to these places are not always in the best of moods because they're going to the dentist or the doctor or something, and there might be some psychological issues that a simpler, more easy to access directory will help with. So there are different, this project incorporated 9 different directories, all with the same general format, but for different buildings in the complex. Next. Sometimes the law changes and you have to change signage. In this case, going back to, I don't know what it is, almost 50 years now, maybe, ADA came into existence. And so the kind of signage that has to be used, particularly for restrooms and things like that, can't be as simple as the sign on the left. You need to have signs that are both tactile and visual and have braille on them, as the panel with the graphics on it on the left show. And in California, you have to have a triangle or a circle on a men's room or a women's room door. So that's just one example of the kind of changes that might be necessary to follow ADA guidelines or other code requirements. Next. Centerpoint is an 8-office building complex in Walnut Creek that is looking to sell off the individual buildings to different owners. So they wanted to update the site graphics and make it more modern and more appealing to potential buyers. So the existing main sign at the entrance road has been, this is actually in the works now, so we don't have actual photographs of the final thing, but these are the presentation graphics on the left, on the right rather. So we simplified the entrance sign. Actually, that tree with the address numbers at the top of the sign on the left wasn't even there. It had been demolished some years ago. So that's an older photo. But it was important that the address numbers be more visible so that they're in white against the darker background. And then a typical sign on the site was the directional sign for traffic to get you to the parking areas. And the existing one had too much going on that you didn't need to know, and too many different shapes and too much information in not a cohesive way. So we simplified that with the one you see on the left, so that as you approach that Y in the road, you can go whichever direction you need to go to get to one of the buildings and park right in front of it. Next. Another reason to get new signage is that the old signage may be very old and worn, as the directory map on the left shows. This is a park right there in Dublin, Heritage Park and Museums. We did a project for that park as well as for Emerald Glen and Fallon Sports Park, using the same basic graphic elements. But the map on the right, on the left rather, on the right, I'm sorry, shows how the directory was redesigned to incorporate the information that needed to be there, plus a a map that's a little more realistic, and also it's done in a material that is not going to deteriorate over time. It's printed on aluminum rather than laminated like the previous one was, that was affected by UV radiation and probably had more color in it than it does now, or did before it was removed. Next. That same park had a whole series of signs, and what we did was look at them in terms of legibility. Usually, as you see on the left, signs are done very often in all caps, which is meant to mean that it's forceful and important and you should read it, but it also means it's harder to read. So it kind of undercuts the importance of it. So usually we make all signs, we avoid using all caps whenever possible. That can be done in small doses, like the city of Dublin, or 2 or 3 word things, but to do a whole text in it is just very off-putting and hard to read. And so this is a sign typical of some of the parks in Dublin, where we've simplified the language and clarified the typography and made it more accessible visually. And moving on, same thing basically in Moraga, although this wasn't an issue of capitalization. The sign on the left was an older sign for a skate park that was being modernized, and it occurred to me that most of the people that use skate parks are teenagers, preteens, young adults, and they're not necessarily going to respond to a drab and off-putting sign like the one on the left. So the new signs were made more colorful, and the information was put on 2 panels. The basic information on one side on welcome, and then a similar panel on the other side of the sign with the warnings and safety information in 3 different colors, so that both sides of the sign were similar in design, but they were geared more to the people who were actually going to read them, and hopefully that worked. In fact, it worked too well, because the 2 original panels were stolen, and we had to replace them with new ones. So somebody liked them well enough to take them, I guess. And I think that's the end. Do we have any questions?
That is. Thank you so much for walking us through all those different principles to get us started. Just a couple of quick questions, and if the folks on the call have questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A and we'll address those. But first question, can you talk a little bit about what role color might play in design and the different messages we're trying to put out?
Well, yeah, I mean, color, it's certainly important, and it can make a big difference to highlight specific information in a body of text, or just to make something more attractive on the page, or on a sign, or however it might be used. It can be done in very simple ways, like you can have like some of the examples were shown, or it can be done so that each element of the design has its own color, like the one with the group in Los Angeles that had all the different logos in that one grid. And color also can convey meaning. Red can mean a number of things. It can be an alerting color like danger, or it can be a color that you apply to a heart, which is a whole different look. Blue and green are more calming colors used for medical and schools and things like that, where you don't want to have the color causing creating any visual tension. Although the use of bright, warm colors and cooler colors together also can play a role in emphasizing certain parts of a design. So there are a lot of ways that color can be used, and it's important that when you do use color that they are distinctive. Some people will want to use a dark blue, but dark blue, if it's printed in small type on white, almost looks black, and so you have to be careful with things like that. And each project will evolve in a way that color will be used however it might have meaning for both the client and for the service of the product, and hopefully will be appealing to whoever the audience is.
Great. Thank you for sharing your insight on colors and the different meanings and the messages they might suggest, and some of the issues that might happen when we kind of go to print, right? And how those colors might have a different impact versus being kind of online. Another question for you: how can businesses tie in their brand with some of the marketing material they're putting out, whether that be a logo or the color scheme they use, or should they tie in their kind of brand and look and feel into the different materials that they're putting out?
Well, yeah, I usually that would be something that a business would want to do, and it depends on the nature of the business. A law firm would do something that would be much more subtle than, say, a restaurant or a candy store or something like that, where you might want the logo to be as bold and as large as was possible, both on the front of the building, for example, and on promotional material, and it can be used on packaging and bags, on banners, on posters, on advertisements, and but just the logo itself to really begin to represent the business in the best way should be used with other materials that are part of a system. So other typography, a set of colors that would be used consistently throughout all of the different uses that the logo might be put to. So that's it has things like that have to be considered, and how important it is to actually have a logo. Some businesses don't really even need one per se, but people like them and they respond to them. So it's just a matter of working through the needs of the business and of the particular materials that the business will be issuing or creating to announce itself.
Thank you so much for, sharing some insight when it relates to branding and how that ties into the different materials we're putting out, and just the fact that businesses may consider having a logo, since people tend to respond to those. Like we have an association with certain logos we see because we become familiar with them and their products and services. So thank you. Final question for you. So during the course of the webinar, you covered about 16 different principles and ways that businesses can make their communication resonate with their audience more. From engagement to modernization to decluttering, simplicity. So you covered kind of a range of different principles. What single change or a couple changes can businesses really focus on and make in order to make their designs and messaging more digestible and engaging for their audience?
Well, I think the first thing that I would do is I always tell clients that the graphic design is not primarily a discipline that wants to create a lot of different elements and put them all together on the page. It's primarily to solve a problem, and a problem is of communication and what you're trying to communicate. And are you trying to sell a product? Are you trying to describe a service? Are you trying to convey information of one kind or another? So the important thing is to simplify whatever it is you're putting out there. The written part of it should be clear and simple, and avoid things like redundancies, and use proper language, and be as clear and organized in a logical way. And then putting that text, excuse me, or information on a page or on a sign or on whatever material it needs to go on should be done in such a way that it's readable and comprehensible, and isn't something that people are just going to glance at and say, "Oh, I can't deal with that," and not consume whatever that information is. The other thing is when you're combining different elements such as text and information and visual elements such as a logo or a photograph or an illustration or other things, that it be done in a way that again is engaging, that it attracts people, but doesn't create a clutter. You have to know kind of when to stop adding things to the design. A lot of people make the mistake of thinking, "Oh, the more the better," and it ends up being detrimental. So basically, those are the two things that are, I think, most important. But there are a lot of other things that are involved that are unique to every project.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. I think that was a really insightful answer and way to kind of end things. And just to kind of recap, you were saying just really understand the message you're trying to convey and start with that, and that'll kind of frame kind of the look and feel and the actual message, and make sure that the message is clear. So go in knowing, what am I trying to communicate? And like you said, simplifying, keeping it simple, not trying to add too much or adding too much clutter. And that'll be how folks can start. Of course, there's all these other principles, but those two things will kind of get everyone started on the right foot. So
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You have to start somewhere, and that's a good place to start. And you may end up being developing a design that has more detail in it, or certain visual elements that are meaningful. But just to add things gratuitously and at random is not, generally doesn't work very well in the end.
right. So yeah, again, having intention on what we're kind of putting on the page and why, and yeah, being very clear about that. So thank you again so much for walking us through design for clear communication. As I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, Kenneth is one of the consultants that's part of the city's new Small Business Navigator program. So he's available to assist eligible small businesses with some graphic needs. So if you need assistance on new marketing material, brochures, really signage, anything, Kenneth is able to assist you. So feel free to reach out. Our information is here on the slide, our email. You're also able to text us if that's more convenient, or give us a call. So thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you at our next webinar.